You came in to the chamber conference. You delivered a pretty tough message as far as the culture, the need to change. And I guess the question is, you presented some ways to benchmark things. But even things like paying students to study, it's not a realistic solution necessarily. How, what can be done immediately to help deal with some of the crisis, let's say with just Detroit public schools?
Well, but why isn't it realistic? I mean, you can, America used to be a country that invented things all the time and that changed constantly. We won the entire Second World War in 44 months, 3 years and 8 months, because we changed constantly. My view is pretty simple. It ain't working. You've lost as many jobs in Michigan as the entire other 49 states combined. You've lost population. You're in a situation where Detroit has gone from 1,800,000 people and the highest per capita income in America to under 900,000 and 68th in per capita income. Now, there ought to be a point to say, maybe we ought to try some new things. And my job, as I was asked to by the chamber, was to begin to outline in a very practical, common sense way, what is Governor Rick Perry doing in Texas? Because Texas created in 2007 as many jobs as all the rest of the country combined. What's Chris Christie doing in New Jersey that's really working? What did John Engler do that enabled Michigan to have a better unemployment rate than the national average in the mid-90s? And when you look at those things, stuff just jumps out at you. And my only job is to say, gosh, why don't you try things that work? And I'm very encouraged by Robert Bobb and what he's done. I think these are remarkable people trying really very hard. I've just always felt as an American that our commitment in our Declaration of Independence, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, actually applied to everybody. So the poorest child in the poorest neighborhood in Detroit has been endowed by God with certain unalienable rights. And I've always felt terrible that for the last 25 years, really starting with the riots in '68, we've refused to take seriously trying to rebuild Detroit, just as on the other side of the state, we refuse to take seriously trying to rebuild Benton Harbor. And so I felt that one of my jobs as a citizen was to speak out on behalf of all the poor people and all the poor neighborhoods who either get patronized by the left or ignored by the right, but have no serious intellectual effort to create solutions that work.
How vital is the person who will take over as the next governor in the state as far as leading the charge, setting a mandate to help implement some things?
Well, I mean, a strong governor who knows what they're doing can make a big difference. John Engler was arguably one of the 3 or 4 most effective governors in America for his entire career. And John Engler brought Michigan to the best unemployment rate compared to the rest of the country in modern times. He brought it to the best rating on debt, the lowest cost of interest. He reduced the size of the government employment by 20%. He consistently encouraged the creation of jobs. It's truly ironic that the 2000 Almanac of American Politics talks about Engler in Michigan as a great success story. And you have to look at, and I don't mean this in any way to be as partisan as it sounds, but if you were to put Engler and Granholm back to back, it is astonishing the power of bad policies to destroy jobs. And you can't quite imagine, and you compare what Granholm did with what Christie's doing and what Perry's doing, and it is astonishing. And I don't mean this as an attack on her as a person, but the ideology of the left in Lansing and the ideology of the left in Detroit have created one of the greatest case studies in job destruction and in prosperity destruction in American history. And Engler would have cut cost, he would have innovated, he would have found new solutions, he would have brought reality to the table. I mean, look, Engler is one of the great intellectual political leaders of my generation. And I look at what John has done. I still go to him today and ask his advice because he is just so smart. And his principles are sound. And by principles, the reason I use 2 + 2 = 4, it's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not liberal. It's not conservative. It's a fact. 2 + 2 = 4. Well, if you raise taxes, you kill jobs. If you lower taxes, you create jobs. These are not theories. These are facts. And we're watching an experiment in Michigan at denying reality, and we've seen both in Detroit and in Lansing that it doesn't work. The number one problem is that the interest groups led by the government employee unions who dominate Lansing refuse to face economic reality. The idea that teachers can have a health insurance program in which they do not contribute a single penny is fundamentally wrong when everybody else in the state has to wrestle with cost. The idea that a handful of union leaders can coerce everybody who works for the state into giving them money to spend is fundamentally wrong. If you simply had a right to not give money for public employees, we know that in Seattle, Washington, for example, when they had the right to not give money, 96% of the teachers did not donate to their union leadership. And those two steps, requiring honest economic parity between state employees, school teachers, and private sector workers, and eliminating the ability of union leaders to coerce money out of their members, those two steps would do more to change Michigan than anything else you could do.
And as you've laid out some ideas and thoughts and suggestions of how to right the track and try to put some proactive ways to deal with what's going on out in the economy with Detroit Public Schools and other things, you've had a chance to really deep get into some of these issues. How optimistic do you feel that these things will take place, that there will be improvements?
Oh, I'm a huge optimist. Look, Michigan a couple hundred years ago was just forests. I mean, there was no civilization here. Then Michigan gradually grew up. And then one day this guy who was working as a foreman at the Edison Electric plant decided to build a car in his garage. And he was a perfect entrepreneur because when Henry Ford built his first car, the car was wider than the doors of the garage. And he had to knock out the sidewall to get the car out. You think over the last 150, 200 years, there were 400 car companies in the 1890s in Michigan. And you think of the wonderful things that Michigan has done. Much of the arsenal of democracy that Franklin Delano Roosevelt used to defeat Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan was Michigan. So I look back and I think, I think Michigan will solve its problems. I think when it solves its problems, it's a beautiful state. It's a state of enormous natural resources. It's a state with a tremendous number of skilled people. There is zero reason that Michigan can't rebound and compete head-to-head with China and India and win the competition. And that's what I'm dedicated to.
You have spoken about a variety of different things here. You've been asked a bunch of questions. Is there any point or anything you haven't been asked or a point you want to make here for viewers who'll be turning in to watch the show about
Sure.
all of this? Something?
I have a very simple message. Your children's future, your grandchildren's future, your state's future, and your country's future is worth the courage to do what it takes. Be not afraid.